The early 20th century was dominated by new technologies being developed in large numbers. To capitalize on these rapid advancements, monthly magazines were published that focused on bringing these new technologies to the general public's attention. This proved to be a great success. The most popular example of these magazines is Popular Mechanics, which published its first issue in 1902 and continues to be published today. Another popular example was Modern Mechanix, which went through several name changes since its first issue in 1928 before its final issue in 2001. The technologies featured in these magazines varied greatly in their application. Power sources, home gadgets, farming equipment, and flying machines are but a few examples of the kinds of inventions and concepts featured. Most notably, particularly during both world wars, was the inclusion of conceptual weaponry and armored vehicles. These were rarely competently designed. Due to a total lack of practical insight into the use of military equipment, the end result was often a design more appropriate for a science fiction setting than a real battlefield. Some designs featured in these magazines are notable for their relative practicality, however, at least when compared to the rest, and their intended usage is somewhat reasonable for being designed by illustrators as nothing more than magazine filler. Welcome to a new Tank Encyclopedia voiced article covering this rather fantastic fictional vehicle from Modern Mechanix. If you like our content, do consider following us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or Reddit. There is also a Discord server for our community where you can find an invitation in the doobly-doo. Before the United States entered the war in 1941, it faced a distinct lack of dedicated tank destroyers. While it would not be until late 1941 when the US finally adopted such a vehicle, the 75mm gun-armed M3 gun motor carriage, designs already existed in the previously mentioned magazines that were intended to fill a similar role. The November 1940 issue of Modern Mechanix features a drawing of a large armored truck with two guns in an even larger turret mounted behind a cab. This mobile pillbox fortress, as it is referred to in the magazine, by virtue of having a single turret on a sensible and presumably existing truck chassis, is on the higher end of practicality regarding conceptual designs found in these magazines. No other name is given to the vehicle and no further information on it can be found, despite supposedly being based on a prototype built by a truck manufacturer based in Los Angeles, California. The mobile pillbox fortress is based on a large truck chassis with two single wheels at the front and two pairs of triple wheels at the rear. The reason for two pairs of triple rear wheels should be clear, as directly above them is a huge domed turret housing a pair of 6-inch guns, presumably naval in origin. The turret can rotate a full 360 degrees, but gun elevation and depression are not known. Depression would inevitably be limited in the forward arc due to the roof of the cab and the bizarrely located headlight mounted on it. Ammunition for the guns is stored in two racks, one upper and one lower. The shells are stored nose up in the two racks that run the full circumference of the interior turret wall. This allows a large number of projectiles to be stowed despite their great size. It is not shown in the drawing where the propellant charges are stored. It is possible they are stored at the front of the turret or on the right side of the guns where they would be obscured, but the most likely explanation is either that they were never considered by the artist or the shells are one piece. No access hatch or door is visible on the turret. Due to the great recoil generated by such large guns, the vehicle features 4 large outriggers around the turret ring. These outriggers appear to be telescopic in extension and fixed in place with no articulation, apart from being capable of extending and retracting their feet up and down. The outriggers are an appropriate design choice for a vehicle that, as the name suggests, acts as a stationary pillbox instead of a more mobile vehicle capable of quickly relocating during combat. The turret's gunner is located on the left side of the guns and has no seat. He has a direct vision telescope that is mounted unusually far back in the turret, which is aiming through a thin visor in the turret's mantlet. Even though the sight would most likely move with the mantlet and stay lined up to see through it, the field of vision as a result of being mounted so far back would be incredibly narrow. Only 2 other crewmen are shown in the turret, those being the loaders, who are each loading their respective guns. As 6-inch guns, each projectile would have been substantial, at likely 45 kilograms or more in weight. With the turret having a pair of guns, this means that each loader has to lift and load projectiles by himself, which, during sustained fire, would be incredibly tiring without any loading aids such as a winch or conveyor, neither of which are shown. The cab is located at the front of the vehicle. The driver's position is assumed to be on the right side due to the placement of the only seat available in the drawing, an unusual choice for an American vehicle. However, due to the perspective of the drawing, the seat may actually be more centered in the cab. On the left side of the cab is the assistant driver, who operates at least one of the 2 machine guns present in the vehicle, both of which are in the front corners of the cab. Ammunition for the machine guns is stowed above the engine in the center of the cab. Due to the placement of the driver, it is likely that he operates the right side machine gun instead of the assistant driver having to move back and forth between 2 guns. Like some tanks with an assistant driver, it is likely that he would be expected to take over driving the vehicle should the driver be injured. They may also alternate duties each day. There are a number of vision ports around the cab. There are 2 ports on the front slope which can be hinged open. Similarly, there is a large hinged port on the sloped roof. It can be assumed there is a second port on the right side which is obscured, but what these upward facing ports would be for is not clear. Each of the 2 machine guns in the front corners have their own fixed vision ports above them, which, like that on the turret, would provide undoubtedly poor visibility for those operating the guns. There is a fixed port on the left side of the cab. Again, it is likely the right side has the same. Lastly, there is a vision port in what appears to be an access door in the back left corner of the cab. A step is present below it on the outside, as is a handle. What appear to be 2 hinges spanning the width of the cab roof are also present. It is not clear how these panels would open. No specific armor values for the vehicle are given, but while the drawing is poorly scaled, it is clear that the armor of the turret is supposed to be very thick by the standards of the time. The turret armor is intended to protect against shells and bombs. No specific shell or bomb is described, whereas no such requirement is given for the cab armor, but it is reasonable to assume it would be at least capable of resisting small arms and shrapnel. The engine has its own armored housing within the cab, and it is not known if the covers over the wheels are simply mudguards or if they too are supposed to be armored. While at its core the mobile pillbox fortress is reasonably designed by the standards of the magazine it was featured in, no information can be found regarding the claim that it was based on a real prototype that underwent 4 months of testing by the US Army. After the United States joined the war, a great deal of effort went into developing and testing trucks carrying anti-tank guns in a wide variety of configurations. The purpose of these vehicles was to be fast and easy to manufacture due to being built on existing chassis, as well as fast on the battlefield, able to quickly respond to reports of enemy tanks in an area and move to engage them. This manufacturing and doctrinal need is incredibly similar to the description of the mobile pillbox fortress, a truck-based vehicle capable of traveling up to 105 km per hour to any threatened area to counter both tanks and infantry, and afterwards relocate to any other area in need of anti-tank support. However, due to the great weight of the vehicle, it is reasonable to expect it to be incapable of reaching such high speeds outside of long straight roads. The choice of a 6-inch gun would be questionable, let alone a pair of them. The incredible capability of such weapons against both tanks and infantry cannot be understated, especially for 1940, but the immense size and weight directly influences the size of the vehicle, which in turn condemns it all as almost entirely impractical. For the vehicle's time, it can be argued quite easily that no practical advantage comes with having such large weapons in a vehicle like this, simply because far smaller and lighter anti-tank guns already existed that were perfectly capable of defeating any tank of the period. At the very least, it would be easy to invent a more sensible gun for this drawing. Despite the similarities between the purpose of the mobile pillbox fortress and the actual tank destroyers the United States would come to use, the sheer unwieldiness and weight of the vehicle would undoubtedly restrict it to roads only, greatly limiting its application as a strategically mobile weapon. The design, like so many others from these magazines, is a great example of theory detached from reality, and it is no surprise that none were ever built. This vehicle was purely for the readers of the magazine, rather than actual use. That's all for this video. Make sure to like, subscribe and hit that bell button. We'll be releasing new videos on the regular. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or Reddit. If you use Discord, there's a link to our community server in the description. And if you would like to help us continue to develop and expand, please consider donating on Patreon or PayPal. All of the funds will be used to help us enhance and design new articles and features for you. Until next time, keep us in your sights.